Imagine the deafening roar of the Bellagio fountains and the chaotic symphony of a city that never sleeps, only to have it all vanish into a haunting, bone-dry silence. Look closely at these jagged white cliffs, because you are standing in a place where cold, deep water used to soar over 70 feet above your very head. This is not merely another barren desert landscape, but the skeleton of a dying reservoir that once fueled the most extravagant neon dream ever constructed in human history. Deep beneath this cracked earth, more than 600 feet under the surface, lies a secret concrete tunnel designed for $1 billion gamble that the world cannot afford to lose. If this desperate plan fails, over 2,300,000 people will lose their only source of drinking water within a matter of just a few days. Lake Mead, the largest man-made reservoir in the entire United States, has withered away until it holds only 33% of its original massive and life-sustaining capacity today. The current water level stands at exactly 1,064 feet, which is more than 3 feet lower than the same period during the previous year and falling. If that number ever reaches the terrifying threshold of 895 feet, the legendary Hoover Dam will stop generating power and go silent forevermore for everyone involved. That ghostly white stripe encircling the canyon walls is not a natural mineral deposit, but a grim reminder of how much water has vanished into the thin desert air. To understand why this neon empire still exists amidst such ruin, we must travel back to the 1930s, when men decided to challenge the very laws of nature. They built a monument to human arrogance in the middle of a wasteland, never realizing they were setting a trap that would take nearly a century to finally spring. Every drop of water flowing through the luxury suites of the Las Vegas Strip is now a borrowed second on a clock that is ticking toward an absolute zero. Look at the neon lights flickering across the Mojave Desert today and try to imagine that less than a century ago, this land was nothing but dust and death. In the year 1931, thousands of desperate men flooded into this scorched valley with a dream that most engineers of that era considered to be a form of suicide. They came to tame the Colorado River, a wild and ancient force that had spent over 6 million years carving the deep canyons of the American West with its raw power. The heat was unbearable, often soaring past 110 degrees Fahrenheit, yet these workers labored without modern air conditioning or any safety gear to protect their weary bodies. They poured millions of tons of concrete into Black Canyon, creating a massive wall over 726 feet tall that would eventually hold back an entire river's flow. This was the birth of the Hoover Dam, a structure so massive it created Lake Mead, a reservoir capable of covering the entire state of California under 1 foot of water. It was hailed as a miracle of the modern age, a triumph of human will over a landscape that was never intended to support millions of people living in luxury. But hidden beneath the celebrations and the engineering brilliance was a fatal mistake that would remain unnoticed for many decades until the climate began to shift toward the extreme. The engineers of that time calculated the water flow based on records from 1895 to 1995, a period they assumed represented the normal state of the river. However, geological data now reveals that those 100 years were actually the wettest century in the history of the region for the last 1,200 years or even more. We built an entire civilization and a multi-billion-dollar gambling empire based on a statistical fluke. A brief moment of abundance in a land that is naturally harsh and unforgivingly dry. Every fountain in Las Vegas and every lush, green golf course in the desert is a monument to this grand illusion of infinite water that never actually truly existed. Today, the evidence of our arrogance is carved into the very stone of the canyon walls for every tourist to see, though few understand the terrifying truth it represents. That massive white band, often called the bathtub ring, shows that the water level has dropped nearly 180 feet from its highest peak in the late 80s. 180 feet is the equivalent of an 18-story building, an enormous volume of life-giving liquid that has simply vanished into the hot and thirsty desert atmosphere. This white scar is not just a stain of salt or minerals, but the fingerprints of human pride left behind on a world that we thought we had finally conquered. The good news first. Lake Mead is currently sitting at 1,064 feet, but that number is a thin veil over a dark and approaching technical disaster. To understand why every hydrologist